Hello, everyone. Welcome back to A Higher Dimension. I'm Gloria Danvers from Gloria Danvers Hypnosis, and I am your host and your guide. Today, I want to start our podcast with a question that sounds simple, but it really isn't. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to A Higher Dimension. I'm Gloria Danvers from Gloria Danvers Hypnosis, and I'm your host and your guide. Today, I want to start our podcast with a question that sounds simple, but it really isn't. Who wrote your story before you were old enough to write it yourself? Now, for the most part, we all came in the same way. A blank slate, a baby whose only job was to eat, poop, and cry. And then our blank slate got written on. But we didn't do it. So who did? Because if we're being honest, most of us didn't grow up as ourselves, quote unquote. We grew up as whatever worked, whatever got us approval, whatever kept the peace, whatever didn't get us in trouble, whatever kept us safe. That would be emotionally, financially, spiritually, all of it. And then one day, on your journey, you get old enough and you look around and you think, wait a minute, is this really me? Or am I living a life that was handed to me? And that's what we're talking about today. The path to understanding yourself is not straightforward, but branches out in every direction. There are not such clear-cut answers for the question, who am I? You are made of many parts, spiritual, physical, metaphysical, and today we are looking at one. And just so we're clear, this isn't a Bash Your Parents episode. It's not a religion is bad episode. It's none of that. This is about something deeper. A lot of what you call your personality, a lot of what you call your beliefs, a lot of what you call who am I was installed before you had any choice. And if you've ever had that feeling that you don't quite know who you are beneath everything you learned, you're not imagining it. Here's why this matters. Because if you're trying to change your life, your relationships, your habits, your confidence, your sense of peace, but you're still living in an old internal script, you'll keep snapping back into the same roles. And you'll think it's you. You'll think you're lazy or weak or not disciplined, or the cruelest thing of all is that you will think you're just plain crazy. But that's not it at all. Sometimes you are just loyal to a story that you didn't choose. And sometimes that story, the one you didn't choose, does not fit. And it feels really bad. It feels dysfunctional and disconnected. So who are the authors of our stories? Most people have three main ones. And the first would be your family. Your family didn't just teach you rules. They taught you what was allowed. Allowed to feel. Allowed to say. Allowed to think. Allowed to want. And families don't even have to be abusive to do this. Sometimes it's just subtle. You learn, don't rock the boat. Don't be too much. Be the strong one. Be tough. Be helpful. Be quiet. Be impressive. Be loyal no matter what. And those aren't just rules. Over time, they become identity. I can give you an example from my own family. My dad was a tough guy. His personality centered around violence and domination. So, what do you think us kids learned about ourselves? That we had to be tough to get approval. That the only way to settle a dispute was to dominate someone physically, to beat them up, to scare them. And I do not want to tell you how old I was before I learned that that wasn't true. Sadly, some of my family still holds on to that idea that abuse is power. But it doesn't make for a happy person, I can tell you that. Second is religion and church culture. You know, faith can be beautiful, but some people were not taught spirituality. They were taught fear dressed up as holiness. And if you grew up with a version of faith that was mostly shame and control, you can still carry that in your bones. Like, like, if I think for myself, I'm wrong. If I want something, I'm selfish. If I say no, I'm bad. If I enjoy, if I enjoy life too much, something is going to punish me. And how sad is that? Learning that pleasure was shameful, learning that completely normal actions and habits were in direct conflict with your version of faith. You may not say it like that, but you live it like that. And if you think about it this way, you wonder, who would do that to a child? Well, look around you. Half the world is made up of restrictive, cruel religions, and people feel free to be cruel in the name of their God. The third is culture and society. This is the author that teaches you what's acceptable, what looks successful, what's embarrassing, what gets you noticed, and what shames you, what's respectable. And it turns people into performers and suppresses natural personalities in order to fit in with their peers. There's such a disconnect there, such a hollowness. And they don't ask, is this true for me? They ask, will I be approved? Am I okay? Do I belong? Now, can you think about how many of the parts of your natural personality Can you think about how many of the parts of your natural personality, how many of your talents you shoved down in shame because it wasn't socially acceptable? No wonder that so many of the clients that I work with come in with a simple goal of knowing and understanding who they are, because they've shoved down and discounted every wonderful thing about themselves that would have told them who they are. And here's the part I really want you to take in. When you're a kid, you're not sitting there evaluating belief systems. You're reading the room, whatever and wherever that room is. Because everything you learn as a kid is to make you safe in your environment. So, you're learning who gets love here, who gets ignored, who gets punished, who gets shunned. How did the black sheep become the black sheep? And how did the golden kid become the golden kid? What do I have to do to stay connected in some way, shape, or form to be in the comfortable dysfunction of my life? So the child self becomes a genius at adaptation. And there begins the shaping of who you are in this world. Not as joy and self-exploration, but out of necessity and, yeah, sometimes fear. But years later, your adult self pays the bill, pays the cost of your twisting yourself into the version that was acceptable to your family, to society, to your church. And eventually, you hit a point where you can't stand living as the version of you that was built for survival. And you start feeling that inner tension. Part of you wants freedom, and part of you is terrified of losing belonging. Yeah, that tug of war is real. And you don't know what freedom means. What are you going to gain if you lose the belonging to your own tribe and their beliefs and their way of life? Periodically, there are places in life where you're cutting the cord. Leaving behind what you were, but yet not being able to see what lies ahead. And that's really frightening. But once you start, the only alternative is to push ahead, to go on faith that the thing that made you unhappy, that made you unsettled, that made you look at yourself in a different way, is the thing that is going to help you find yourself. So how do you know if you're living from an inherited script? How do you know if you're living from an inherited script? Well, I'll give you some signs. So listen and be honest with yourself. You feel guilty when you set even a reasonable boundary. You explain yourself too much, like you need permission. You can't relax if someone is upset with you. You can't relax if someone is upset with you. You automatically assume that you're the problem. You shrink around authority even when you know you're capable. You don't trust your own judgment. You look outside yourself first. You chase goals that look good, but don't feel good. You keep a good image even when you're not okay. And here's a big one. You can't tell the difference between your intuition and your conditioning because they both speak inside your head. But one of them is you, and one of them is programming. And now we're going to go even a little deeper because this is where people wake up. Most of these scripts are held together by one thing: fear of consequence, fear of loss, fear of loneliness. The subconscious says, if I become myself, what will it cost me? And sometimes the cost is real. Sometimes people do get judged, rejected, criticized, gossiped about, or punished for changing. But here's what's also true. A lot of people are paying a cost either way. They keep the old script, and the cost is resentment, anxiety, emptiness in a life that doesn't feel like theirs, relationships where they're not fully seen, being good while dying inside, being acceptable to your parents even when it didn't feel good. Can you imagine what I would be like if I kept the script that I was raised with and continually tried to solve my problems with my fists, with my rage, with my ability to intimidate? I would be someone that I didn't like. Someone who could not and would not grow. Someone who attracted that same violence. So the violence became unacceptable to me. and I learned to grow as a human being and a soul. What did that cost me? It cost me solidarity with my family. What did it give me? Peace. So the question becomes, what cost are you willing to pay? The cost of staying the same or the cost of becoming free? So let me give you something practical here. It's not a meditation, no visualization. It's a simple process that I'd like for you to start using in real time. And that's the whose voice is that method. When you hear a thought that shrinks you, a shame thought, a fear thought, a you're wrong thought, pause and ask, who taught me this? What did believing this protect me from? What has it cost me to keep believing it? And here's where the truth comes out. As I said before, some beliefs are mighty expensive. Be nice costs you boundaries. Don't upset anyone costs you your voice. God is disappointed in you costs you peace. Desire is selfish costs you life. Don't trust yourself costs you everything. And so you don't just ask, is this true? You ask, what has believing this stolen from me? What has believing this stolen from my life? The other part is, whose voice is this? Is it your mother? Yes. And really, whose voice is this? Is it your mother's? Your father's? Is it a teacher's or a preacher's? Is it an old partner's? Is it society? Because I'm telling you, half the people walking around with low self-esteem are actually just carrying someone else's voice as their inner narrator. So what did this belief protect you from when you were younger? Maybe it protected you from being punished. Maybe it protected you from being mocked. Maybe it protected you from being abandoned. Maybe it protected you from conflict. And again, what is it costing me now? And this is the question that breaks the spell. Because beliefs have a price tag. Don't upset anyone costs you your truth. Being a strong one costs you your receiving. Don't trust yourself costs you confidence. Stay small costs you your life. Stay small costs you your life force. When you start seeing the price tag, believe me, you stop romanticizing the script because it costs you so much more than it ever gave you. And now let's talk about the true self that you never got to be. The true self isn't some perfect version of you, and it's not a brand new personality. It's really simpler than that. It's you before performance. It's you when you're not managing other people's reactions. It's you when you're not trying to be good. It's you when you're not afraid of being judged. And for some of you, meeting that self is going to bring up grief. Because you'll realize that you've been living in a costume. And so if that grief comes up, I want you to understand what it is. It's not weakness. It's truth. It's not weakness, it's truth. So, how do you actually claim yourself without making a big dramatic new me moment that collapses by next week? You do it in small acts of authorship that feel authentic. And here are three that work. One honest sentence a day, not a confrontation, not a war, just one honest sentence that you stop editing. And here are your examples. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. I need time to think. I don't agree. I'm not comfortable with that. And if you can't say it out loud yet, write it down. The point is, you start practicing being real. Number two, one boundary that you actually keep. Not 10 boundaries, just one. Because your subconscious learns from evidence, not from speeches. When you keep one boundary, you prove to the deeper mind that you're not abandoning yourself anymore. And number three, one choice that's yours, no explanation. This is hard for people who are trained to justify their existence. But try it. Make one small choice this week that is yours, and don't over-explain it to anyone. It could be what you wear, what you eat, who you say yes to, who you say no to, how you spend your Saturday. You are building the muscle. You're building the muscle of authorship. And because I see this so much in my practice, let me bring this into my world, which is hypnosis, because this is where hypnosis really shines. This isn't just an intellectual issue. If it were, you could just read a book and be done. This is subconscious. This is an awakening of your own true soul, where the human and the spirit merge. These scripts live in identity. They live in the body. They live in emotional reflex. So in hypnosis, what we're doing is not positive thinking. We're finding the original rules that you internalized. I have, and I'm sorry, I was writing my podcast because I was a bad girl doing yesterday's work. Do you like it? Good. Oh no. Stress. Things like that. Yeah. I think this too. It's maybe would be a good idea for you not to stick your wallet in it. But, oh, okay. You know why? Because it's in Pisces. I wrote you that. You stupid universe. What are you doing? Well, yeah, basically, it's the moon having its period. Blue moons. Mhm. I know. My podcast today is about, who wrote your blood story, which is basically like when you were a baby, you know. And I think I was looking at all the pictures of you when you were little and thinking, where did you learn about yourself? Where did that come from? When did you learn that you were Matriana? When did you learn that, or when did you learn all this stuff? And when did you learn it? So anyway, I mean, I'm not using you as an example. I'm using me because I was raised to be violent. So a lot of what you feel, Leela, that's not even you like inherited all that stuff. Like somebody gave you a script and said, "This is Leela," and now you got. Well, yeah, yeah. But you didn't. I didn't. No, too much. We're, I would need to like, copy, and I rest their souls. And I like all need to. They would understand that she's a little child, and they do understand you're that kid. Because you couldn't regulate your emotions because it was so frustrating because nobody was putting you around. I didn't understand. It was easier to, you couldn't say anything because nobody was going to listen. So you acted out. That's where that came from. Laura didn't have to do that. And I'm not saying Laura didn't have her issues, but that was, no, so, and the summer was, yeah, be grateful that somebody found it. See, this is a reframe. Mm-mm. It says that you cut your wallet. Okay. Oh, you're on your way. Okay. Yeah, there you go. With the pretty good thing. Important. So you go aboard to have chicken. It's to something going to take us. Because it always fucking is. It's supposed to get hot in March. I don't know. So I go for a walk every morning when it's cold. Yeah. Or, so, They can choose when they pass. And your intention was not to do that. There's nothing done to avoid it. Yeah. What's cool? Right. Yeah. You know, I was reading this thing in the Times today where they were talking about how there were certain types of people that would like bail out on things like we're always calling saying, do this, I can't do that, sorry. And it wasn't that they didn't want to do it, is that they have a finite amount of energy. And they're basically telling you, I am out of energy. I cannot do this. And I so resonated with that. And I'm betting you do too. It's not that for anything, but you have a certain amount of energy. You really have to be careful with that. So, yeah. No, it's not your favorite. In my voice. There's another thing I read in the Times today that said that you automatically become more calm when you hear your mother's voice. Yeah, we do. That's one true thing. And the other true thing is that people lose their shit every single day. So, I mean, sure it was. Lots of things are preventable, but they happen anyway. I love you too. Everything's going to be okay. Look at the things. No, yeah, we were right. No. Oh, no! Wait! She only has a Keurig? Hello? Yeah, because we're flying in and it will take up a lot of space in our luggage and you have to bring all fucking towels. Oh, no. Yeah, I know. Yes. Whatever you want, man. I don't care. Um, right. Yeah. That sounds fun. You know, I don't see why not. Although we're going to be a proper by the time she gets off of school. And she had offered to take you to the grocery store. So if she offered to take you to the grocery store, that she has time to bring it. Yeah. I know what else can I write that? No, I don't think I have such a good. Mm, mm, and you'll dance, if you feel like they'll dance with like, yeah, yeah. None of us are the wild childs that we used to be. That's right. And we know that Bella probably doesn't dance anyway. Oh, God, I hate it when I pick on her, but honestly, she's so funny. Yeah. Mhm. That's right. It is. It's funny what people think of themselves and what reality actually is. Yeah. Their spirits aren't fractured like this. You're still in the process of scrambling, trying to re-put yourself together. And you're right. I didn't. I'm telling you, menopause is like, sun coming out of the clouds when it's over. You feel very peaceful. Well, I know. It won't feel great. I do. You deserve it too. You'll have it. Yeah. One reason you will have it is because we all sleep with people. That's what I'm thinking about. It's just that, people that are they're crazy don't have anybody that's hearing it or seeing it. And you do. Well, you deserve it. So, trying to say, there you go. Yeah, it is. I'm not worried about it. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to sit down and write a list of things that I probably should be worried about or not, that I'm not, and I'll just send it to you so you'll have something to worry. Oh, this is new. Yes, this is real. Stop. I'm going to have to do a cartoon character review on ChatGPT. This is real. This is hell. Oh, but man, I think you're so funny. It's so sweet. I just love you so much. Well, well, as soon as I get this podcast going, you're all. Oh, listen, no, but I had a dream last night that I made my cookies and I couldn't get them. They were all different sizes. I was like, oh no, they're not gonna look good on the cookie plate. Hey, have you ever made roll cookies like we make a roll you cut off pieces? So I just wondered how you can get all the slices. Mm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have to put it on the bottom too. See, I have a tendency to cut fat on the top and skinny on the bottom. So maybe I'll just shorten the night. Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Mm. So, oh no, I'm getting. Oh, I know. I just understood. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Doesn't make any sense. My brain just went somewhere else for a minute. I love you. Oh, you want though. But I like if you're listening, Justin. Okay. You care for that. Bye. No. Now let me now let me bring this into my world, hypnosis, because this is where hypnosis shines. This isn't just an intellectual issue, because if it was, you could read a book and be done. This is subconscious. This is an awakening of your own true soul, where the human and the spirit merge. These scripts live in identity. They live in the body. They live in emotional reflex. So in hypnosis, what we're doing is not positive thinking. We're finding the original rules that you we're we're finding the original rules that you internalized, the fear that kept them in place, and the identity that formed around them. And when we rewrite it at the level that actually runs your life, we don't do that with force. We do it with clarity and authority, because the true self does not need to scream. The true self needs to be chosen. If you've lived most of your life in a story that someone wrote, it can feel scary to pick up the pen. Just giving yourself permission to pick up the pen is huge, because the old story came with rules, and the new story comes with responsibility. But that's the trade. And believe me, it is so worth it, because you can't fully love, fully relax, fully trust, fully create if you're still auditioning for approval inside your own life. So here's the takeaway. You don't have to hate the people who wrote the first chapters, but you do have to stop letting them write the next one. Now, if this episode hit you and you want help rewriting those internal scripts, I do that work with people through hypnosis all the time. You can shoot me an email or book a free consultation at gloriadanvershypnosis.com. And thank you for spending time with me today. If you know someone who's been living in a life that doesn't feel like If you know someone who's been living in a life that doesn't feel like theirs, share this episode with them. And remember, You didn't choose the first story, but you can choose the next chapter. And if you're feeling grief, hearing that, well, good. That means you're awake. Because grief very often is the price of freedom. You grieve who you could have been, but then you become them anyway. And sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can do is to give yourself permission to stop being who you were told to be. Thanks for joining me, and hope to hear from. So thanks for joining me today, and next week I have no idea what I'll be talking about, but hopefully it'll be something really good. Until then, smile, be happy, know yourself, and I'll see you later. Bye.